Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video, and today I'm just going to be doing another weekly update for Victober. So we're now halfway through Victober and I wanted to tell you about what I've been reading in the last week or so. So in the last week I have finished off 2 books and then I'm halfway through 2 books as well as the 2 that I have been reading much slower throughout the whole of the month. So the 2 books that I have finished off in the last week that I wanted to tell you about. The first one is Michael Armstrong, The Factory Boy by Frances Trollope. This was a really interesting Victorian novel and one that I really liked. So this is an industrial novel and it tells a story of a boy called Michael Armstrong who works in a factory. He's 10 years old and what happens when the wealthy owner of the factory takes an interest in him. But it's a bit of a complicated interest because basically the factory owner is out walking one day with a woman who he is trying to impress, and Michael Armstrong saves the woman from an angry cow, and then when the factory master says, oh, we should give him 6pence, the woman who he's trying to impress says, what are you talking about? We must give him way more than that. You should adopt him and look after him and raise him to be a gentleman, which the factory owner then sort of starts doing, but soon decides that that isn't really exactly what he wants, and everything goes terribly wrong for Michael Armstrong. It is a really interesting novel. It's a very interesting look at industrialisation and the working conditions, especially for children in mills in the early to mid 19th century. One of the other main characters along with Michael Armstrong is a young lady, Miss Brotherson. She is an heiress. Her father also owned a mill and that's where she gets all her money from. When she learns about the appalling working conditions, especially for children in factories, she decides to try and help some people, and she is very cool as a character. I really liked her. It was just a really interesting novel. I feel like I'm not sure whether or not I liked the first half more than the second half, or I just found the second half surprising. And there's something in the preface that Frances Trollope wrote saying that she had one intention and then didn't go through with that intention in the second half, and I'm really unclear what it means, and I googled the hell out of it and I could not find out what it meant. So if anyone knows about the history of Michael Armstrong, the Factory Boy, and what Frances Trollope did while writing it, / changed about it, / didn't do with it or didn't follow through with it, I'd be very curious to know. And then the other thing that I finished off in the last week was this. This is Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands by Mary Seacole. This is the autobiography of Mary Seacole, who was a British Jamaican nurse in the Victorian period. She was very important in providing medical care for British soldiers in the Crimean War, which is also what Florence Nightingale is very famous for, but obviously Florence Nightingale is more famous. And I think especially internationally, actually, Mary Seacole is very famous in the UK and I expect in the Caribbean as well, but I feel like speaking about her in videos over the last couple of weeks, she's very unknown in a lot of other parts of the world. But she was a really interesting woman, and this autobiography is just great. It's fascinating both in terms of Mary Seacole's experience as a nurse and her experience as a nurse in wartime, but also her experience as a very experienced medical professional female, and how people react to that. Then also her experience not just as a woman but as a mixed race woman and what that meant at this point in time and how people treated her. There's this kind of fantastic bit in this book where she's been in the States helping people, and she's reporting this kind of event she's at where someone raises a toast to her and says how amazing she's been, and then finishes by saying, but of course we all wish that she was American and white. And Mary Seacole just basically stood up and put them all down and said, you know, I think I'd be just as good a nurse no matter what the colour of my skin. Basically, I've always thought Mary Seacole was quite cool. Having read this autobiography, I now think she's even cooler. This was very fascinating. Would highly recommend. And then the other 2 things I am reading at the moment, which I am part of the way through. I'm sort of a third of the way through The Half Sisters by Geraldine Dewsbury and about a quarter of the way through Armadale, though Armadale is pretty chunky. So The Half Sisters is a reread for me, and I'm buddy reading this with Marissa from Blatantly Bookish. I love this book so much. I'm so glad I'm rereading it because I just love it. It's just amazing. It's just such a fantastic book. This book is about 2 sisters, 2 half-sisters, Bianca and Alice. They don't know about each other's existence. Bianca is an illegitimate daughter of Alice's father from before. Alice's father married Alice's mother. Alice has grown up a very middle-class respectable life, and Bianca has grown up in poverty in Italy. She comes over to England at the beginning of the book to try and find her father, who it turns out is dead, and then in order to try and support herself and her mother, Bianca becomes an actress, and it's just about their lives and their very, very different lives, and their relationship when they do finally meet, and it is so good. It's so good. Bianca is just one of my favourite characters in all of Victorian literature, and I love the way that Geraldine Dewsbury writes about Bianca's like career as an actress. I feel like there are many women in Victorian novels who have jobs and who work in order to support themselves, but I don't feel like there are very many women in Victorian novels who have a career and like a profession that they feel passionately about, where they love what they do and they're like keen to advance their career. Like I just love how Geraldine Dewsbury writes about that in this. I would also say that like I'd forgotten just how clear and beautiful the writing style is in the Half Sisters and just how accessible it is. Like I feel like it must be one of the most accessible Victorian books I've read in terms of the writing. Like the writing is just so clear, and yeah, I really, really love it. It's so good. It's so good. I'm so looking forward to finishing it off because yeah, just fantastic. And then yes, I've also been reading Armadale by Wilkie Collins. I'm a quarter of the way through. Lots of drama has happened. It's a bit confusing and convoluted, as Wilkie Collins sometimes is, but I kind of like that. I think I'm really enjoying it so far, but we'll see. Me and Wilkie Collins have a little bit of a complicated relationship. So this follows two young men, both called Alan Armadale. They're not related, but they have the same name due to various complicated connections between them in their past. And basically something very complicated happened in the past between their fathers, which means that they have the same name, but also that there is like a big family secret between both of them. And one of them tells his son that he should never, ever, ever meet the other Alan Armadale, and that he should at all costs avoid the other Alan Armadale. But of course they meet, they become friends, one of them not knowing who the other is, and everything goes on from there. It's very intriguing. I'm a quarter of the way through. There's a lot to go, it's quite long, but I am really enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying the writing, and the characterisation is very interesting. So we will see how the rest goes, and I will let you know next week how I get on with it. I'll probably have finished it by next week. And then I am still continuing to read Shirley, and also this, my source book about the Great Exhibition. Both of these I'm really enjoying. Shirley is just a joy to reread. It's so interesting, and the characterisation is just, yeah, really compelling and very intriguing. And then this is proving very fascinating. I'm really enjoying reading lots of sources about the Great Exhibition and lots of, you know, newspaper articles, journals, diaries and everything. I'm quite near the end of this actually, so I might finish this off in the next week or so, we'll see. But this has been a really interesting read as well. And then I'm also listening to two things on audiobook. One is Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens, which I am rereading, and I'm buddy reading it with Jenny from Bookish Shenanigans and Carolyn from Carolyn's Reading Ramblings. I'm really, really, really loving rereading Little Dorrit. I had forgotten quite how much I love Little Dorrit. It's just so good, and I love the character of Amy Dorrit. Like, I think she is my favourite Dickensian heroine who's like the main character. There are other female characters in Dickens who I love more, I think, a little bit, but of like the main female characters who are the main characters, you know what I mean? I feel like Amy Dorrit is my favourite. I just think she's fantastic. So I'm like a quarter of the way through so far. I'm probably not going to finish it in Victober, I think, because it's a 40-hour audiobook. It'll probably carry on into November, but I'm just absolutely loving it. It's just such a joy. Then the other thing that I've been listening to on audiobook, which I completely forgot to mention last week, though I was listening to it last week as well, is some fairy tales by Oscar Wilde, which me and my partner Nick are listening to together on audiobook, which I'm really, really enjoying. They're really intriguing because I feel like they feel like very traditional fairy tales, and then there'll just be like one or two lines where there's like a big twist that makes it not quite like an ordinary fairy tale in a really clever, very Oscar Wilde way, which I'm really enjoying. So they're good fun. We're about halfway through the collection. It's also a really interesting version on Audible actually, because it's got lots of different famous actors reading the various different stories, which I'm enjoying. Some of the performances are really good, so that's good fun as well. And I think that's all I have to say for this Victober update. In the next week I'm going to be carrying on with Armadale and the Half Sisters, and hopefully we'll finish them both off in the next week. And then I would like to read Amy Levy's The Romance of the Shop quite soon, and then I also think I would like to start Lady Anna by Anthony Trollope. That's all for now. Please let me know how your Victobers are going, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.